The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. Chapter 3, Spirit. The definition of spirit. The definition of spirit is life or intelligence conceived of entirely apart from physical embodiment. It is vital essence, force, energy, as distinct from matter. Probably the definition of God as spirit is more easily understood, more readily accepted than any other term used in describing deity. Jesus, in talking with the woman of Samaria, explained, God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The nature of being is a unity, with three distinct attributes: spirit, soul, and body. Spirit is the active and self-conscious principle. Spirit is first cause or God, the absolute essence of all that is. It is the great or universal I am. Spirit is conscious mind, and is the power which knows itself. It is conscious being. The spirit is self-propelling. It is absolute and all. It is self-existent and has all life within itself. It is the Word, and the Word is volition. It has choice because it is volition. It is will because it chooses. It is free spirit because it knows nothing outside itself, and therefore nothing different from itself. Spirit is the Father, Mother, God, because it is the principle of unity back of all things. The masculine and the feminine principles both come from the one. Spirit is all life, truth, love, being, cause and effect. It is the only power in the universe that knows itself. The spirit could know nothing outside itself. That would be God and something else. Spirit is all, the center and circumference of everything that exists, both manifest and unmanifest. It has no enemies, no differences, no otherness, no apartness, no separation from itself. It is undivided, complete, and perfect within itself, having no opposites and no opposition. It knows only its own ability, and since it is all, it cannot be hindered in any way, shape, or manner. It is impossible for a finite mind to comprehend such a complete life and power. In moments of real inspiration, we realize, to a degree at least, that God is all, that which has within itself all that really is, the life in everything and the love through everything, the one presence and the one infinite person, whom we call God or Spirit. Within this one, all live. Its nature. The fundamental premise upon which the philosophy of the Bible is developed is that spirit is one, and that creation is the result of spirit's one mode of action. Perhaps the one point on which we are all agreed is that whatever the nature of first cause or spirit, it is creative. If this were not true, nothing could come into existence. It is impossible to think of creative life expressing itself other than in livingness. Jesus undoubtedly meant just this when he explained that he had come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Another point on which we are all agreed as to the nature of first cause is that it is harmonious. If there were an element of inharmony, discord, or decay anywhere in its nature, it would destroy itself. It has always been taught that the soul of the universe is that receptive medium into which the spirit breathes forth the forms of its thought. It is subjective to the spirit. That which is subjective is always impersonal, neutral, plastic, passive, and receptive. Wherever we find subjective law, we shall find something that is compelled to receive that which is given it, and compelled also to act upon it. Consequently, the soul of the universe has been called a blind force, not knowing, only doing. It has been called the servant of the eternal Spirit throughout the ages. It is the medium of the thought, power, and action of Spirit. Spirit, the changeless. Creation does not mean making something out of nothing. Creation is the passing of Spirit into form and is eternally going on. Spirit cannot change. For being all, there is nothing for it to change into. This is self-evident. It is necessary for us to understand that the only active principle is Spirit, self-conscious, self-knowing life, and that all else is subject to its will. The Spirit is conscious of its own thought, its own desire, its own manifest action, and it is conscious that its desire is satisfied. Consequently, it is conscious of that which it manifests, but it is not conscious of any effort or process in its manifestation. It is necessary that soul and body should exist because Spirit, without manifestation, would construct only a dream world, never coming to self-realization. In order to express, there must be a medium through which Spirit manifests, and there must be a manifestation, hence soul and body. The teaching of the great thinkers of all time is that we live in a threefold universe of spirit, soul, and body, of intelligence, substance, and form. The action of Spirit within itself. God, the self-existent first cause, speaks and it is done. His word is law. God is word. God is law. God is Spirit. Spirit knows itself. The law is the servant of the Spirit and is set in motion through its word. All law is some form of universal force or energy. Law does not know itself. Law knows only to do. It is the medium through which the Spirit operates to fulfill its purpose. Did God make the law? It is impossible to think of a time when law did not operate. It is impossible to conceive that it was ever created. Therefore, law must be coexistent and co-eternal with Spirit, a part of the causeless nature of the divine reality. The Spirit operates through law, which is some part of its own nature. Therefore, all action must be some action of Spirit as law. The word of Spirit moves through the law, and since the law must be as timeless as the Spirit, we could not think of a time when law was not, or a time when it would cease to be. Neither can we imagine the law ever failing to operate once it is set in motion. We have then an infinite Spirit and an infinite law, intelligence and the way it works, God working through law, which is unfailing and certain. Creation, the activity of God, the activity of Spirit, the passing of substance into form through a law which is set in motion by the word of Spirit. Spirit is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So our thought cannot picture a time when the activity of Spirit will cease. The whole action of Spirit must be within itself, upon the law, which is also within itself, and upon the universal stuff, which is also within itself. The three in reality are one, the Trinity. There is something called God that makes things out of himself, or itself, by becoming the things it makes, according to law and order. As nearly as the intelligence of the human race is able to judge, Spirit creates by contemplation. How we understand its operation. The philosophy of applied metaphysics rests upon 2 or 3 very simple theoretical propositions. All invisible principles are theoretical, in that we cannot appraise them with our physical senses. We cannot weigh and measure them. Life, love, and beauty may be considered theoretical, in that no one has ever seen them. We see only their manifestations. But because of such manifestations, we reason that the reality exists. Metaphysical work rests upon the theory that the universe is a thing of absolute intelligence, that this intelligence is self-existent. Spirit was not created. It was, is, and ever will be. We are compelled to assume the actuality of an original creative energy and intelligence, before which nothing comes. God, the divine or universal life principle, or whatever we choose to call it, is an original, uncreated, changeless being. Not a being with parts, but being with potentialities. There is a vast difference. A present interpretation of the universe, according to one learned physicist, is that of an infinite thinker, thinking mathematically. The infinite thinker is a spontaneous thinker. The infinite thinker thinks, and what follows is in a sequence of law and order, of cause and effect. This is the mathematics. The infinite thinker, in movement, is principle. The being of the infinite thinker is pure spirit, and may be thought of, in a sense which we but dimly comprehend, as the infinite or abstract essence of concrete personality, and the cause of all objective and subjective manifestation. To express this more simply, God thinks. As the result of God's thought, law is set in motion, or the thought moves as law, in a field of cause and effect. Its movement is now mathematical. The only thing that is spontaneous is the creative thought itself, the contemplation of spirit. Metaphysics and physics. The laws of mind or spirit are not different from the laws of chemistry and physics. Metaphysics begins where physics leaves off. Everything is movement. Everything can take hold of and analyze. All things in the physical world or the world of form are in a certain rate of vibration and are an effect. This is the result of an infinite thinker, thinking mathematically. To reduce this proposition to the practical life of the individual, our belief is that anything the mind thinks, it can unthink. If, therefore, by the law of cause and effect we have produced unpleasant conditions, we should be able by this same law to produce an entirely different effect. Another principle which is fundamental to our practice is that not only what is set in motion can be changed, but that the truth known is demonstrated. The knowledge of truth and its demonstration is both simultaneous and instantaneous. Since we are dealing with that which is limitless, knowing no big and no little, the possibility of our demonstration rests not in the principle, but in our acknowledgement of and embodiment in it, of the ideas we desire experienced. The saying of peace will not produce peace unless back of the word is a realization of the meaning of peace. So in the simplicity of our own language, we try to convince ourselves of the reality of that for which we are treating, knowing that in such degree as we have an embodiment of the idea, it is thrown into a mechanical field and must operate. Spirit is the power that knows itself. Whatever that power within us is that knows itself constitutes the part of us which is spirit or spiritual. To be self-conscious is to be a spiritual entity. Mind in its self-conscious form cannot be differentiated from spirit. Mind in its subjective or subconscious state is the law of spirit. Man is a spirit, while God is the spirit. Man is an individual, while God is the universal. But since the individual comes from and is in the universal, it follows that man is a little world within himself. This is what Jesus meant when he said that man has inherent life within himself. The meaning of inherent life is real life, creative life. No limit can be placed upon the spirit of man. It merges with the universal spirit, for the two are really one. God is in us as we are in God, the same essence, the degree apparently different. The one finite and the other infinite. And since the infinite cannot come from the finite, it follows that the finite must come from the infinite, a little circle within the big circle. Metaphysically, we recognize the universal spirit as the source of all life and inspiration, an infinite self-knowingness, which we grasp only in part, but which is ever available, since the infinite is omnipresent. The mind of man is an extension of the eternal mind or spirit, and his evolution is the unfolding of this everlasting mind or spirit through his thought. Only one mind. There is no such thing as your mind, my mind, and God's mind. There is only mind, in which all live, move, and have our being. Things are ideas in form. What else could they be? There is nothing from which to make things except ideas. In the beginning, we behold nothing visible. There is only an infinite possibility, a limitless imagination, a consciousness. The only action of this consciousness being idea. That which we call our subjective mind is, in reality, our identity in infinite mind. It is the result of our mental attitudes. It is our mental atmosphere, our center, in universal subjective mind, in which are retained all the images, impressions, inherited tendencies, and race suggestions. We see then that our subjective mind is the medium through which experiences come to us. There is one first cause, spirit, soul, and body, cause, medium, and effect, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Not three gods, but the triune nature of the one God, the one cause. We think of spirit as absolute, self-conscious intelligence. We think of soul as receptive to intelligence, and the intelligence as always acting upon it. Spirit and soul intersphere each other, and both have omnipresence. The spirit of the universe permeates the soul of the universe, forever impregnating it with ideas. The soul of the universe is the holy womb of nature, producing the forms which appear in the manifest universe. The body of the universe is the result of the thought of spirit, operating through the medium of soul. The Father is absolute, positive intelligence. The Son is the offspring of the Father. The Holy Ghost is the servant of the eternal Spirit throughout the ages. Spirit is absolute intelligence, operating through the soul of receptive intelligence, impregnating it with the divine ideas. The personalness of God. We should think of God not only as principle, forever pushing forward into expression, but as infinite person. In other words, if we merely think of an abstract principle and a mathematical law of cause and effect, we shall lose all warmth and color. We should be very careful in abstracting the principle, not to forget the essence. There is something in the human mind that desires to think of God or spirit as person. Anything which has been in the human mind since time began, anything we are unable to erase from the human mind as a deep urge, arises out of reality. Let us not forget that there is inherent necessity for warmth and color. The universe is more than an inexorable law of cause and effect. Personality cannot emerge from a principle which does not contain the inherent possibility of personality. In each one of us, to each one of us, through each one of us, something is personalized, and that which is personalized is personal to its own personification. Spiritual evolution should make the infinite not more distant, but more intimate. End of chapter 3. And in synopsis of chapter 3, Ernest Holmes is beginning to go into more depth about the Spirit of God. Remember, now there are 3 aspects of God. All are God, and it acts as one triune being. And the first aspect that we're delving into is the Spirit. This is the self-conscious principle of God. This is the part where volition comes into play. There's free will. There's a creative power which creates spontaneously. So this is the intelligence, the absolute intelligence of the universe is the Spirit of God. And it's different from the law of God, or the soul, which is subjective, and it receives the impressions from the Spirit and it creates them and acts on them. And remember, the law is just a blind force, not knowing, only doing. So the Spirit of God is your conscious mind. It's your intelligence. And then you speak your word of truth, and then it goes into your subconscious mind, which is the law, which is also called the soul. And it doesn't have self-knowing intelligence the way that the Spirit does. It has intelligence in the fact that it creates things, and it has a different kind of intelligence because it knows how to create anything that the Spirit impresses upon it. So the only difference is that it's not self-knowing, the soul or the law or the subconscious. So we're talking about spirit. Spirit is the intelligence that we use when we're speaking, when we're reading, when we're writing. And the way the Spirit creates is by contemplating. Contemplating itself, contemplating the laws of truth. And if you're creating from a place of maybe not being aware of truth, maybe you're contemplating things that aren't true, well, the law is still going to produce those things for you. So it's better to contemplate the truth and to know the truth, because the truth will make you free through the law, through the use of the law. So there's a lot in this chapter, and we're getting into the Trinity and the personalness of God. You have to remember, just because the law is a blind force, not knowing, only doing, God is a personal spirit to us. And God is personal to every person, because since we're all connected with God, there's one big circle, and each of us has a little circle within the big circle. And we're completely one with God, but God is unique to each one of us, because God presents itself to us through our perception. And every one of us has a different perception and a unique way of communicating with God. So there's just one God, but this one God is a personal spirit to each one of us, and it presents itself in a totally personal way through each one of us, and through the use that we make of the law is how we express God. So it's so interesting, because we're all so one, and we're all so connected, yet we're all so unique, and we each maintain our individuality within the whole, which is all one. So it's multiplicity within unity. There's just one power, one mind, one substance, but endless forms that it can take. So it's very exciting, and I look forward to getting into the next chapter.